So then, Chelsea, Martin, Tuesday. Oh, yeah. We're playing Liam Rosenior's Chelsea as well now. It's not the same. It's not Enzo Maresca's Leicester. We've got Liam Rosenior's Hull City, and we did quite well in those games against both those managers in the Championship for those teams. But this is Chelsea, and they do have a little bit more quality. Some players called Cole Palmer, Reece James, Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But anyway, where Chelsea are at right now, in case people don't know, they're in the top 5. They are through the Champions League into the round. They're actually skipping a round because they finished in the top 8. They are out of the League Cup and they are still in the FA Cup, and that's where they are. So they're still fighting on quite a few fronts, but they have had a change of manager. He's not been there very long, but he has come across from Strasbourg. And if people don't know, Strasbourg are owned by Blueco, who part own Chelsea. So those two clubs have had excellent relations and nothing at all dodgy has gone on between them whatsoever.
No, sir. Nothing
whatsoever. No weird loans, no weird signings, inflating fees, nothing like that. Not saving Ben Chilwell's career so that he can go play in France for a bit. Not recalling a striker and putting them there because their striker at Strasbourg gets injured, and so they just need to recall one of their other loans that's out elsewhere, David Datro Fofana, and put him there, even though he had permanent interest from Celtic and other clubs. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. They are a club that have a lot of finance. They've spent a lot of money. They have a huge squad, a lot of them out on loan, some of them at other clubs. They've given us some of them, Ethan Ampadu. But like I said, it's Rosenior now, Martin. So how have they actually been getting on under him? Because they've had 9 league games and maybe a few Champions League / Cup games. They didn't do great against Arsenal, for example. But how's it been so far?
So he got off to a really rocky start at Chelsea and didn't get a win for the first 5 games. He played Newcastle, drew against them. Villa lost against them. Bournemouth drew against them. City drew against them. So that's not too bad, to be fair. And then Fulham lost. But then since that Fulham game, they beat Brentford 2-0, beat Palace 3-1, beat West Ham 3-2, and beat Wolves 3-1. So maybe there's something there that the teams that have been playing recently aren't that great outside of Brentford. Lots of teams who are in a bit of a downward cycle. Lots of some of those have been in a long-term downward cycle this season, but Palace especially have been recently a downward cycle after being quite good at the start of the season. But yeah, they've in that time they are the team in 8th. If in the last 9 games, they will be 8th in the league, so in the form table for the last 9 games since Rossini took over. And yeah, they've done a few weird things in this time. So they've underperformed their goals. So they've scored 17 goals from 24 XG. That's quite a massive underperformance in a 9-game streak. That's not short of just a little bit less than 1 XG per game underperformance, which is pretty mental. And then they've overperformed from the XG against. So they've only conceded 12 goals from 18 XG. So the god of XG giveth and the god of XG taketh away for Chelsea in particular in these first 9 games. So I think it's a bit hard to say where I would say and how well Rossini is doing at the moment, because even in one of these games that they won, they conceded 2 goals to West Ham. And yeah,
West Ham were 2-0 up.
Yeah, they were. I watched that game once live, and I watched it actually again today because it was an interesting game with some things which we could got to take advantage of. But yeah, they're a weird team, Chelsea, and they've got a lot of talent. Maybe they should be doing better than what they have been doing overall.
Those numbers are funny because you could argue almost levels out when you're underperforming by similar amounts on both, but yeah, it's just very odd. Some of these games as well, just remembering back, like last minute equaliser against City, the West Ham game being 2-0 down and having to put them away 3-2 eventually, and you're at home. Like, it's not been pretty. It's not been pretty, even though they've started to win again and started to put things together. Really, really not best. And I've seen a few of these games. I've seen a couple of their Champions League games as well. Not always the best team to look at, I have to say. And let's talk about in possession now, because I have to say Hull in particular, and I know this is going back a bit, but Rosenior's team was quite renowned for Didn't concede a load of goals, but that's mainly because they had the ball. They didn't score tons and tons of goals because they played quite passively. They knocked it around quite a lot. They didn't look to penetrate. They looked to keep the ball and then choose their moments when to attack. It was quite boring at times because they just retained possession quite a bit. But it's looked a bit more front-footed, I think, so far at Chelsea. And some of the games have been a bit more open. Not all of them, but some of them have been, certainly. So is that maybe to explain away the large amount of expected goals against they've conceded in quite a small sample size of games? Possibly. But let's talk about them in kind of their structure then, Martin. How does it actually look?
So it's a 3-2 build-up structure with either the right back or left back dropping alongside the two centre backs. One of the games I've seen recently, it was Cucurella who was doing a lot of dropping into it, and another game it was Malagusta who was dropping in. So they do generally vary which side it will be, which can do it. They look to play through the middle quite often in early build-up, and then they'll look for passes between the lines to spur their attacking midfielders dropping deeper. They'll generally only have one player occupying wide areas on both sides, so it'll be fullback on one side, winger on the other. And you can generally know which, depending on what player you've got on the wing on one side, if you've got, say, a Garnacho on one flank, you know he's going to be the one occupying the width, and then the other side fullback will be the one dropping in.
Reece James Augusto, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But then as they progress to the final third, they'll have players rotate out, and Palmer especially likes to combine with wide players. He's quite effective on that right half space, and he's got a good shot on him. Everyone's aware how good Cole Palmer is. We don't need to talk about that. But yeah, they do generally look to build slowly, as you've already mentioned, and there's a lot of central numbers going on there, so they do like to have overloads in the middle. I know you generally find it with overloads on the flanks, but with Chelsea under Rossini, they're looking more for overloads in central spaces. That's why you've got a lot of players coming deep, and even though they've got wingers, they do often act more like 10s, at least on one side of the pitch. So you'll have, like they've had Enzo Fernandez playing as one of their wide players in some games recently.
But Palmer, actually, he sometimes plays on the right too.
But he is more operating at the 10, and he's operating very narrow and drops deep quite often to help them in build-up, and that's what they do often, is having wide players drop out in build-up, and they'll get try to get incisive through balls through the lines to greet them. So yeah, it's important to keep an eye on these rotations and who's moving where, because they do like to move players around a bit, but there's a lot of things which is quite settled, mainly the 3-2 build-up structure and the looking to penetrate through the middle rather than the flanks.
And I think some of the reason why this aspect works is because of the versatility of some of those players, kind of the broadness of some players' skill sets. At the start of the season, Enzo Fernandez was at the base of midfield, taking the ball off the centre-backs. Later in the season, when Palmer was injured, he was playing as the number 10. Now under Rossini, he's also been operating out wide. Reece James has played as a centre-mid. He's also played as a full-back. He's obviously good at both because he's so pressure-resistant, so comfortable with the ball. They've got basically a lot of answers to a lot of questions. You've sometimes seen Enzo Fernandez play as the 10 with Palmer on the right wing recently. So like they've changed it up, like who's receiving the ball where, which players are playing where. I don't necessarily think the wing and fullback thing you mentioned, I haven't really noticed it being like a thing they do against a particular opposition where they maybe think, oh, the right back's weak for them, so we'll put Garnacho or Neto on that player and we'll get them to run at them a lot. I've not really noticed that being the case. I think it's a bit more random than that. I haven't really noticed a pattern, if that makes sense, of like the weaker fullback getting targeted or whatnot. Someone like Reece James, for example, like I always want him, if I'm a manager, well, his crossing's excellence, you want him wide for that, but like he is so good on the ball that you can have him inverting into midfield areas and creating those overloads you mentioned, because he's so good as a footballer. But they use him in so many different ways because he finds so many solutions as a player for them, and they can do that. They've also been really good this season at protecting Reece James, because I think he probably is their best player, or at least top 3. And they've basically been able to rotate him out quite a lot. Maresca was doing it, benching him, putting him back in. Benched him at Ellen Road, if you remember, which was good. He did not come, I don't know if he came on, he might come on late, but he did not start the game, which was really, really good for us, obviously, because he is exceptional. England's starting right back as well. But anyway, I'm getting slightly sidetracked with player profiles in that system. So let's talk about them out of possession. How does that actually look? I feel like this is the bit, like I say, that's maybe not quite there with Rossini, even if the possession stuff is starting to get there.
So yeah, they've had some mixed stuff. They've had some aggressive man-to-man approaches, especially from opposition goal kicks, looking to force teams to go long. Oh no, they might try to force us to go long. Never mind. But they are generally quite aggressive. They do commit a lot of bodies forward to press, and you'll see that from the. I'll quickly mention it now. Their PPDA is the most aggressive in the league. First for PPDA,
Really?
so the
Wow.
lowest pit. Yeah. So they've got a really
That's under two
aggressive
different managers,
press.
but still, is that something that we think
Yeah,
is kind of maintained? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I do think they were pretty aggressive under Maresca as well. To be fair, but they do also have these weird spells where they're not as aggressive. Like in the game against West Ham, West Ham's second goal arrived when there was just not putting any pressure on West Ham's back line at all, and they was just able to pick out a long pass through to I think Bowen
Yeah,
initially
it was
received
bone,
it,
yeah.
and then he put a ball into Somerville. Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's that they still early season spell because I have seen I watched a couple of random YouTube like fan sort of tactical kind of things on Chelsea because they get a lot of those sort of Chelsea, much more than what we do because they're a top six club, so there's not more random people watching them who create this kind of stuff. But they were talking about this man to man press being more prevalent, but I didn't really see it as much. Maybe it was just a game against West Ham where he wasn't bothering to do it because it's West Ham, but it just didn't appear to be there for me, at least not to what I consider is a man-to-man approach. Obviously, Leeds fans especially have a bit of a different approach to what man-to-man pressing really is, or at least if you fully go into it as a doctrine of it, it's much more aggressive than what I've seen from Chelsea. But it could have just been the opposition that they didn't feel that they needed to put out extra pressure, which was maybe a bad choice because it let West Ham have all this time to play these long passes, which they was doing. But yeah, they still end up winning that game, but that's more just because I think West Ham are pretty bozo and similar to us in that respect of conceding late goals. But yeah, they're weird out of possession and not as good as what they are in possession.
Yes.
And with the quality of the players they've got, that I'd be concerned even if it is only early days from Rosenia.
The reason I think that basically the in possession stuff's been able to maintain is because I don't think there's like a huge jump from Maresca to Rosenia. And so like a lot of the stuff Maresca was criticised for with Leicester was his passive football. That did continue a little bit with Chelsea. And Rosenia's known for that more with Hull than Strasbourg. He did pretty well with Strasbourg by all accounts. Not that I ever watched his team, but they were a bit more aggressive on the front foot, like in possession, wanted to be up the pitch in the areas they were taking the ball, and they were a bit more fun to watch. Whereas Hull were definitely a bit more passive. So I think that maybe he's like seen that Maresca had them in a certain way and it's not gone too far away from that. But like the out of possession stuff, like you say, I think it's just a bit messy at the moment. I don't think they've worked this out. This is the area that they're sort of lacking in. If they're going to go man to man, if they're not going to go man to man, how that looks. Yeah, I don't know. This is the bit that they need to work on, and a bit where we can maybe have a bit more joy. So can't really add anything else to what you said. So we'll leave that there. Do you think there'll be any changes to the usual against us, or are you expecting in possession and out of possession, the basics to largely be the same here, Martin?
Oh, I wonder if it's going to be similar to. I'm not sure if they would underestimate us quite in the same way that they did maybe against West Ham. I know that after this is at Chelsea. Is this one? But that game against West Ham also was at their ground as well. So maybe we could catch them on an off day. Maybe they underestimate us, but I think with our recent performances, they'll probably show us a bit more respect, especially with what happened in the reverse fixture as well. So I think they will be wanting to set this one right, and will probably be the usual aggressive selves in this one against us, which could work well for us depending on how we approach it.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be too different. And like when you're getting your feet under the table as a manager, you kind of want to double down on a lot of your tactics, don't you, to really drill it into the players if that's one thing you're having to do. In terms of the lineup then, Martin, for Chelsea, they do some different things sometimes. They do rotate a little bit more. They've got one of those deeper squads that can do that. It's not likely they're going to be completely unchanged from whatever the Wolves team was that they won 3-1 at the weekend. Cole Palmer with a hat-trick and 2 penalties. Don't think you deserve a match ball for that. You scored 2 penalties with a hat-trick, personally anyway.
Unless he took the penalties with separate feet. If he took one with his left foot and one with his right foot, then maybe I'd say he should get it. Just to really take the piss, just take it with his weaker foot.
That'd be mental, especially because they've got 2 other really good penalty takers in their squad in Fernandez and João Pedro, who are both really, really good at them as well. That would be mental if he suddenly turned up and he was like, I'm going to take this one with my right foot. All right then, Cole. But yeah, he's getting back to full fitness. So I expect he will start, Martin, probably in the 10. Might be on the flank on the right, but probably in the 10. But other things might change around, and you've got a predicted lineup here, which is you know what's funny? We've actually been getting the Chelsea lineups better than the Leeds, not Chelsea, the opposition lineups better than the Leeds ones recently. So maybe you're right. You've not gone for Reece James though, which is good news because honestly, I think he's unbelievable. So I hope that you're right and he's on the bench again. So where are you coming at with that?
Well, I've got Sanchez in goal after the back line of Gusto, Chalobah, Fofana, Cucurella, but there is a chance for Badiashile or just take it Fofana's place or Chalobah's place, and for Jarrell Hatter to take up Cucurella's spot. Then in midfield, I've gone Caicedo, Fernandez behind the striker, Neto on the right, Palmer attacking mid, Garnacho on the left, and then probably leaning more towards Delap than Pedro in this one. I think they'll want a more physical striker against us and our back line. But yeah, there is always a chance that we could be wrong with this because they have such a deep squad. They do have some players who are out. Jamie Gittins is injured at the moment, which is good news for us because he's a very, very talented player, very good close control and dribbling. Like you said, Reece James is probably available now, but he didn't play because he had a knock, so I was just heading towards that. Maybe he doesn't risk him against us in what is probably going to be quite a physical game. Maybe he opts to save him for a more difficult fixture than Leeds at home. Because let's face it, we should be an easy one for a club of Chelsea standing, so he may look to rest him, but maybe there's a little bit of respect for us because of his time in the Championship with Hull. Maybe he's come across Farke's Leeds, hasn't he, in Farke's first season? That was the season where he had that really overpowered Hull squad, wasn't it, I think? So he should have a healthy respect for Daniel Farke's Leeds, but who knows? We'll see what the lineup looks like, but whatever combination of players they put out, nearly every player who Chelsea put out would get a starting position in our team. Maybe the only exception to that is striker. I take the Calvert-Lewin over Pedro or Delap, personally, but that's just me.
I think I would too. I mean, João Pedro would start for us. He just wouldn't start there. I think his best position is just behind a striker. He's one of those annoying players that Chelsea have signed quite a lot of in recent years, where you're not quite a striker, not quite an attacking midfielder, not quite a winger. You're probably somewhere in between all three. And Nkunku was the same.
Is Delap their only real, proper centre forward?
Yeah.
9. That's crazy.
Because they loaned out Jackson with an obligation to buy Munich.
And Breuer's gone to Burnley.
And I can't think of anyone else right now off the top of my head. There might be another. Oh, there's Guiu, Mark Guiu. I don't know how to say.
Oh yeah, he's currently with them because he was on loan Sunderland and they brought him back, didn't they?
Yeah, before the deadline even closed, which was funny. He only played one game for Sunderland. Now he's with Chelsea, but they've been using him in the cups. And speaking of the cups, so the reason why I don't end up with tons of rotation is because they've got Hull in the Liam Rosenior derby on the weekend because they have them in the FA Cup. So I think that they may stick with most of the recent players. Like they probably will want James to come back again because he's so good. But yeah. Everything else looks pretty spot on. I can't really argue. The other position I don't think is great for them is centre-back. I'm not saying that Fofana wouldn't start for us because he probably would. He is a good player. He's had a lot of injuries. Obviously, Levi Colwill's out injured. He's exceptional, but he's been injured all season with an ACL. I think he's due back in March. Might, if he has a really good end to the season, might have a small chance at the England squad, and I do like him a lot. But he's out, which is good. So it's Badiashile and Chalobah. Or it's Tosin, who had a nightmare game at Ellen Road, didn't he? I don't really love any of those particularly. I think Chalobah's a bit overrated.
I think Tosin's injured as well.
Well, there you go. He's very weak in the air for someone so tall. and not that great on the ball. Well, he used to be considered that. He's not so much. And Badia Shields, okay, he's all right. Not really a big lover of all those. But the other positions, as you say, really a lot of strength. And I did just do a quick Google search while you were talking, because you said Chelsea should be beating a team like Leeds. And some people might be offended at what you said. But just bear in mind, they have spent $1.5 billion on this squad. Don't know what that is in pounds. But since Bowley took over in 2022, that's in 4 years, they spent $1.5 billion on this squad in signings. So it should be a lot better than it is. And I have to say, I only think they've got 4 excellent players. And to spend 1.5 billion and only have 4 excellent players, a little bit embarrassing, in my opinion. So, yeah. Who is the biggest threat, though? Speaking of excellent players, because Cole Palmer, when he has just got a hat-trick off the weekend after they've won 4 Premier League games in a row, does annoy me a little bit hearing that and saying that out loud. But he's not the only one. I mean, I think Enzo Fernandez has been absolutely crucial this season, but like arguably their best player is Caicedo, because he just dominates in there. And those are probably the main ones. And that's a midfield trio that might play together here in this one, as you've said. So that's the area of the pitch that's scary for Leeds, because they have so much quality there. They have players that can really dominate the ball on and off it. They have players that have a lot of aggression. They have a lot of goals in that area. Good physicality. Fernandez isn't the quickest, but like still pretty good physicality and intensity. So that area is where I'm looking and going, that's where Chelsea can win this match. If they can really get a foothold and just dominate the ball. And we just can't get out. Even if we have to go more direct, we just can't get out. So that's where I'm at mine. Anyone else scare you? Anything else scare you?
I don't think we need to say any more about Chelsea's players. They've got a lot of excellent players.
Yeah, nice. Any other stats stuff you want to go over?
Nothing really that's all that interesting. I've mentioned the only one really which really caught my eye was the PPDA. Mm-hmm. But also with the combination of them being 19th for off-ball pressure, which caught my eye. So first for PPDA, which is passes per defensive action, and then 19 for off-ball pressure, which off-ball pressure includes forcing opponents out of the final third and keeping their possession deep and intercepting passes. So that speaks to me that when opponents do get into their third, they aren't forced out quickly. And so that's quite interesting. At least for me, that I found that interesting, but I'm weird like that.
So yeah, it's a slightly weird one. I guess the only one to mention, because Leeds have been pretty good from set pieces this season, is their expected goals against for set pieces, 1.41. But then for set piece goals, they're pretty good. They're second in the league, 0.36, and that's per 90 on those stats. Yeah. Chelsea are pretty good in that regard, because they've got quite a lot of good crossers of the ball, quite a lot of good deliverers of the ball. But anyway, I think that's enough on Chelsea, so we'll move on to the next section, shall we? What are we expecting our lineup to look like then, Martin? This is a quick turnaround. There were some leggy legs, definitely some tired legs in the end of that Forest win. But we did have an extra day on Chelsea, because we played at 8 o'clock on Friday. They played at 3 o'clock on Saturday. So 19 hours of difference there, which is probably something, but not much of something, considering I'm not expecting wholesale changes from Farke. Do you think there'll be any rotation at all?
No.
I don't either. It's quite an easy section.
I think it's going to be very much the same side. The only thing change I think that I would like him to make would be to put Bonnotte on the bench. Maybe that would be nice. Yeah, just like, what was with that? Why have you got 2 centre-backs on the bench in Bornau and Biol, and you don't have your new spark?
And he was never planning to use Biol anyway, so it didn't make any sense to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're not planning to use Biol, don't put him in the side. Just have Bonnotte on there. Anyway, yeah, that's the only change I could see.
So the bench.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the 11 itself did well enough, and everyone seems fine. I mean, Gruev did get smashed, but I think he's probably all right. Okafor scored a goal. Aronson isn't getting dropped anytime soon. I think he'll keep that basic shape. I prefer it in the forward line with Stack not there, because obviously recently he's been playing a weird centre mid pushed up position where he's probably the most advanced, with kind of Aronson as kind of a 3 behind Calvert-Lewin. It's a bit funky, but it probably suits Okafor and Aronson better to be in those roles and stack deeper. Unfortunately, he is not back for this game. He will probably be back for the Villa game just after the Birmingham game. 2 trips to Birmingham in a week, if people hadn't noticed. That's going to be wonderful, unless you already live there, which some of our lovely subscribers do. But yeah, I don't see anything changing. There's not even one thing. Maybe the only thing is Biol coming in for a centre-back, but like, which one would it? I don't think it'd be any of them, right?
I think if anyone was to come out, I think it would be Justin.
Mm.
I think he's classed as the backup.
Utility man in a few positions, yeah. So he could be a good sub.
If anyone, I think he would be the guy. But I'm not sure if we need the extra height in this one as much as we have in some games. Like they're a very technically good side of Chelsea, but I don't think they're as physical as some of the other top six sides, in total honesty. Like if you compare them to Arsenal, it's like night and day. Arsenal have got a lot more strength and power in their side than what Chelsea do, but they've got a lot of technicality in this side, so that's a balance, isn't it?
I totally agree. Someone like Caicedo is a freak because he is 5'10", but he is an absolute monster physically. He is so strong and really does get himself about. But you're right, like height wise, not a lot of height. Like he's one of the most physical players and he's 5'10". So there you go. In terms of Leeds then, because of the way they're going to play, especially mine, which players do you think we're going to be able to cause the most problems with to them?
So I'm expecting Calvert-Lewin to cause problems for their backline. First of all, because they're going to force us to go long, and we've got a good player to go long to. So if we can get him involved and get good balls up to him, get players around him when he does win those balls, get the second balls won, that'd be good. So I'm looking at players like Aronson as being quite effective in this one if he can stick close by to Calvert-Lewin like he has been known to do and break from there. That would be nice. And depending on if it is Okafor again, I'm not sure it will be. Of course, maybe that's another change. Maybe he will look to this one in the away fixture against Chelsea and think maybe I should go with an extra midfielder in this one. I'm thinking maybe Longstaff. So maybe Longstaff could come in for this one. But Goodmanson will be important for this one. His pace and power down that left channel will cause problems for I think nearly any side in this league when he's on his best days. But yeah, I think that's the main ones. I'd look to Bogle as well. But I thought wing backs always do well against sides when there's space to get into, and there should be space in this one. That's one thing Chelsea have been great at under Rosinha is stopping teams from attacking their space. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think the directness to Calvert-Lewin and Okafor being one, and that means longer balls. But then if we're going to go shorter, I think you've nailed it. It's Goodmanson and Okafor on that left channel more so than any other area. I think they've got the carrying and the power and the pace to get forward and get us up the pitch. And so they are playing both of those two, or even one of those two, like you said with Goodmanson, then that's probably one of our main outlets for me. That's where we can start to get ourselves up the pitch, get bodies around the box, hopefully, and Goodmanson, maybe one of these cutbacks will finally get him an assist because he still doesn't have a goal involvement yet, but I'm hoping he can have a big day here because it does strike me that would be a good area to exploit them in. For sure, is there anyone that might struggle in this one? So obviously we were talking about their press maybe being man-to-man. That can be a good upside for someone like Goodmanson, who can maybe get around their press completely by breaking it like that. That'd be great. Is there anyone like in terms of a man-to-man game that you might be a bit worried about against them?
No, not at the moment. Maybe Darlow. That would maybe be the only one who I think could have problems if they do look to trigger a press onto him. But with Justin in over ball now, I'm a bit more comfortable with players playing through an aggressive press, and the fact that we have to get out to just go along to Calvert-Lewin always helps. So it doesn't really concern me now that we've adapted the system and aren't looking to play through a press like we were doing before this change to the 3-5-2. So as long as we are going long when they are pressing aggressively, I have no problems with that.
Yep, that's fine. I'm still worried about just in terms of the quality and technical mismatch in certain areas. So I think like Caicedo compared to Gruev physically and technically, obviously miles clear. He's one of the best midfielders in the world. Cole Palmer, just because he's got so many moments in him, I'd pivot. Can they handle those kind of moments where he's going to have a lot of space in the half spaces to pick pockets and find areas to score? You remember this first half of the season in particular, had a bit of a problem with midfield runners not being tracked well. I hope that's not an issue here. Maybe that's part of the reason why Gruev's in. He's probably better for those moments, but Ampadu can't be sleeping around the edge of the box, let's put it that way. So I'm a little bit worried about them in those areas because you've already mentioned how they will stodge up the middle of the pitch with a lot of bodies. I'm worried about our midfield and how they deal with that, because it is going to be a lot of runners. You're going to have to track a lot of movements around that area of the pitch. You're going to have to be very careful with who's picking up who. Aronson's going to have to do a decent job, like diligently, defensively, like getting back, supporting midfielders, supporting his wing back. Like he's going to have to get through a lot of work here. So yeah, that sort of thing for me as well is the big one. I think in the wide areas we might be all right, even though they've got some quality there. I think that could be okay, unless we look to attack and then they can maybe hit us in transition. But I'm hoping there's not too many moments where they're able to do that too frequently. Any changes, do you think, to our tactics for this one in or out of possession? I think the main one you've already been over is that you're probably going to see a bit more long ball from Leeds this season. Not this season, in this game, based on their average for the season. That's for sure one. Is there anything else you would add to that in or out of possession?
No, I think that's the main thing. Maybe we'll be a bit less aggressive with our press. But that's quite normal for away fixtures anyway, right? So that's not really too different to what we'd normally see. But yeah, I'd expect us to be trying to stodge things up and looking to frustrate them, because that is something which West Ham did do well in at least the first half in the game against Chelsea. Chelsea were able to pick their way around it slowly and got on top in the second half. But it's important to not be too passive with them. Like, we need to ask some questions of them out of possession and not be as passive for long periods as what West Ham were. And that was ultimately their downfall, because they tried to sit on that lead for too long and were giving too much time and space to Chelsea, and Chelsea were eventually able to break them down. So if we are somehow able to get a goal lead in this one, I think it's important for us to not cling on to it for dear life, and we need to be proactive with changes. Sorry, I just realised what I just said and who our manager is. But yes.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I don't think Leeds are a particularly amazing team at like having to sit back and defend their box for large stretches, but there are probably going to be periods where we're going to have to do that a little bit here. I was looking at the Opta, a really good piece this week on the type of blocks each team uses defensively: high block, mid block, or low block. And Chelsea are the second lowest in terms of the league for low block, which is not that surprising given how much of the ball they have. They're often just going to have it in other areas, and they're not going to have to sit back and sit deep for very long stretches. Man City, the only one with less than them. They're a very, very much a mid-blocky team, and so are we. But I do worry that we might end up having to retreat back a lot. I'm kind of hoping we can keep ourselves in more or less somewhere between a mid-block and a mid to low block, and just keep things solid and compact, and find ways to break out of that in transition, find ways to get around Calvert-Lewin in transition, bodies around him for second balls and whatnot. And that's why Okafor and Aronson might actually be good here in this one around him. So that is the main one. It's going longer. It's not sitting too deep, but you still need to be compact, because Chelsea do have a lot of quality, even though they can be quite passive under Maresca and Rosinha. They will be able to like unlock a door at any given moment, just because they've got Cole Palmer's left foot around the edge of the box, for example. In terms of what this game of football will look like then, and where it'll be won or lost, what are you thinking, Martin, to end us off?
So I do think that set pieces could be important for us in this one. I do think that we have enough bodies who are pretty big to cause them problems. They aren't too bad at defending them themselves, but I do think that can always be a strength for us, whether it's from the first or second phase of a set piece. That'll give us ways to attack Chelsea's box, and I do think that we probably have the aerial superiority over them, especially with obviously we play more centre backs to start with. I know Justin isn't exactly the tallest, but who knows? We could end up seeing Biol coming back in for this one. Maybe this is the one where he does get put back in, but we know what Fark's like after a convincing win, so I'm not expecting too many changes. But I do think that this game will look very one-sided at times. I think Chelsea will have probably quite a lot of attacks for us to try to absorb and then counter-attack them. And I think that is where it's going to be important for us. If we can take advantage of those counter-attacking moments and stop them from scoring from their consolidated possession, then we can get a good thing in this game and hopefully nick something. But I don't have the greatest hope for this one, even if we did do well against them in the last fixture. But it's a different beast going away from home to a club. And while I do think that there is some things that we can take joy from, a lot would need to go right for us and wrong for them for us to get something here. But if we can enact a good game plan, then we do have a chance in this one, a small one, but it's there.
Yeah, it's frustrating because obviously we're looking at this block of games. There's 3, and it's like with part of the reason why I think so many were desperate to beat Forest was because of this 3 games back to back. It's obviously Villa after this away, and then it's City at home. And I think anything more than a point has to be seen as good from these 3. But I have to say, like, I do genuinely believe that, especially one of Chelsea or Villa, even though they're the 2 away games, I think we can frustrate them, and I think we can nick something. And that's either in a transitional moment. So I think that if we're talking about key players or where will the game be won, I think Okafor and Goodmanson on that channel is probably where I'm looking for a goal, hopefully. We really, really need Calvert-Lewin to have a good game here. He needs to be able to hold up the ball. It cannot be coming back at us constantly all the time. Remember against Arsenal, for example, like he battled pretty well, but it was still difficult for him. I'm hoping he has a bit more joy against these centre-backs and wins a few more of those knockdowns or disrupts them enough for us to win the second ball. So that's one thing I would say. And then on the set-piece thing, that is obviously so big for us because we are so proficient in those moments. And like Chelsea's data is pretty decent in that regard, as you said earlier, but they don't also concede many. So just get balls thrown into that box and just hope that we can pile some pressure on, because the reason their data is pretty good is probably because they're just not conceding very many, that's all. So yeah, I do think we can get some joy there, some physicality and some size in the box. We can cause some frustration for them. And then, like I said, transitional moments will be big for us. Can we keep them at bay and at arm's length for 90 minutes around the edge of our own box sometimes, which is going to be periods where it's like that? That's the question as well. So hopefully we can. Hopefully players like Rodon and Strauch have their best game when it comes to defending stuff. And Justin has his usual game recently, and he's good in this one as well. But that's everything, I think. So just to remind people, Martin, where can they read Will's amazing article on transfers?
They can read it at patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. And just want to quickly mention that in that article, he talks about how underrated Okafor has become. And this was like day 2 before this game, where he had a really good game. So Will's feeling a bit vindicated in his view here.
Smug.
Yes,
he's a little smug bastard. No, we love him. No, yeah, he was spot on. That was published like 3 hours before the Forest game, I think. So perfect timing, really. And that's where you'll find other bonus content. So please do go over there and subscribe. You'll find loads of other stuff. And we'll probably have more stuff coming soon, again, because it's FA Cup weekend and we'll think of something, because we're not going to be talking about that. Like and subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff. Thank you very much. All that's left for me to say, as ever, is thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you as well, Adam.
And thank you to you, dear listeners. We'll be back to review this game, and then it'll be a bit quieter, as we say, for the cup game against Brum. And then we've got to go back to Brum to play their big rivals, so we'll be previewing that not long after. But we'll do something in the middle, I'm sure. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your week, weekend, everything else, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.